Hello, my name is Riley Byrne, and this is my assessment of competency mastery for leadership and policy for my seminar class in my master's in special education. So, when looking at the goals, when looking at the objectives of this lesson, I chose two projects, both from my leadership and ethics class. The first was the induction program, and the second one was the professional development planning activity. I chose both of these assignments because they can make an impact on the whole school as opposed to just individuals. A lot of the assignments we did were great for helping individual students and individual teachers or individual classes even, but I feel like the induction program and the professional development planning activity helped could help the whole school, potential to help the entire school or even bigger, I guess. So starting with the induction program in the leadership and ethics class, the assignment asked me to take on the role as a mentor to a special education teacher who's in their first year of teaching. As the mentor of the new teacher, I had to create 3 goals of something I would do for the induction program that would help them as a new teacher, help them to be the best teacher they can, and make them feel comfortable at school. I then had to create 5 activities that could be done during an induction program to help new teachers. Some of the activities that I chose were things like reviewing IEPs, making sure they understand everything written in there, writing lessons that are specific to special education teachers and students, and classroom management, just in general and specific to special education. I chose so from this activity, the induction activity, I was able to look at the special education system from a different point of view, the point of view of a mentor. As a younger teacher, I haven't had a lot of opportunities to mentor other teachers or anybody really, and it was interesting to think about it from a different angle. I was also able to ask myself what teachers really need. What do they really need when they come in to start? I know what I needed when I was a first year teacher, but what do first year special education teachers need, whether they're coming from a teaching background already in general education classroom or a brand new teacher. And then I had to decide how I could provide that to them. So connecting this to the objective, this activity helped me to establish and maintain high expectations for the entire school, like I said before. So when planning for my induction program, I had to think about what kinds of opportunities I could provide that would give teachers the best start to this career in special education. And I felt like it was better to start with higher expectations for new teachers because too many people have lower expectations when they get into a new job. I, through these activities, I created higher expectation for the mentee, and I would hold them to it because I feel like it's important for all teachers to keep themselves to a higher expectation in the school, to hold them to that as well, and vice versa for the teachers to hold a high expectation for their school. I thought that it was important as a mentor to hold the teachers to a higher expectation because if you start with the low expectations, that's what they're going to expect they can do for their entire career. That's what they're going to get used to. I think it's better to hold them to a higher expectation right off the bat, so that they can know what they want to hold themselves to as professionals. I also, through this assignment, wanted to be able to support the mentees and support them in being able to do all of the things listed in the objective, providing high expectations, advocate for policies, create the best environment for students. According to the Iris Center module, Beginning Teacher Support, it says that students need these things. They need a feeling of a sense of belonging in their schools, a collaborative school environment in which they can work with general educators, specialists, and paraprofessionals to meet the needs of students with disabilities, reasonable work assignments, reasonable caseloads, no extra responsibilities their first year or support in those things, opportunities to continue learning, and specific assistance and feedback with work problems. And without those things, we cannot expect a new teacher to provide the best education for their student either. So as a mentor, I would be helping the teacher to provide the best education for their student and keep high expectations for themselves. When applying this to my career, although I'm a newer teacher, one day I may be a mentor to a teacher, mentor to a brand new teacher, whether it's special ed or not. And Looking back on this assignment, I could have some ideas on what kinds of things I knew that I needed. I feel like it's good that I did this assignment as a younger teacher, closer to my first year of teaching, so that I can remember what things I knew I needed and I wouldn't be too out of touch to provide them with what they need. And I can look back on my reflections and just remember what kinds of things will help them to have the best practices and highest expectations for themselves in their classroom. The second assignment was the professional development planning assignment from my leadership and ethics class as well. So during this assignment, we had to create a plan for professional development of a special education teaching staff. The assignment was to decide what content could be used for the professional development throughout the school year, and I was asked to plan at least 4 different topics that could be discussed within a professional development setting at my school, and to write learning objectives for each of the topics. During the professional development activity, my focus was to decide what kinds of PD would be for the students, specifically special education, would be for the teachers, specifically the special education teachers in my school. I analyzed the professional development that I've been to and thought about the needs of the school that I'm in currently. Most of my learning came from looking at things we might be lacking in our special education programs at the school, or places in which teacher knowledge might be weaker. As I thought about the needs of the special education program, I had to also decide how I was going to address those needs within a PD program, or within a PD meeting. An example of an issue that I found at school is that a number of our students that are constantly moving in and out of the school when a teacher with an IEP, or when a student with an IEP moves into the school from outside of the district, they need support, and I didn't feel like we were giving as much support as we possibly could to the transitioning of students between schools. So connecting it to an objective here, again, it helps to set higher expectations for the teachers. By making decisions about the professional development that's needed, I can reflect on the school itself and decide if we are holding the highest expectations for all teachers, for all students, and providing the best inclusive environment, the best safe environment for all the students. Also, by some of the activities that I wrote during this professional development, it can help improve the school. Like some of the activities I included were reviewing IEP goals, transitioning practices, like I mentioned, and other special education requirements. These create higher expectations for students, as well as give the teachers support for their practice in their classroom. They can review the best practices for all students and grow in their abilities as teachers in a less stress-inducing way. Rather than figuring it out on yourselves, you have that support from the school. Some things we've talked about in my professional development that helped were talking about building family relationships, and it makes doing that helps the students feel more comfortable. It makes a safer and more comfortable learning environment for them. To apply this to teaching, this activity was a good way to practice thinking about what needs there are in schools for our special needs students. By looking at the current state of the school, considering the deficits, and figuring out how we could address them, I was able to put my own teaching into perspective as well. Although I might not change the entire special education program, there may be some things that I could have a emphasis on just by having thought through these things, potentially one day maybe leading some professional development in some way. So one way this objective can apply to special education in particular is that teachers always need to be held to the highest expectations. And I think that goes for a lot of professions, but teachers always need to be held to the highest expectations, because if not, we become complacent. We become complacent as teachers as far as, well, what I'm doing is just good enough, when really we should be asking, what could I do that's better? When teachers are given support, they can begin to expect more of themselves as well. So through the professional development and through the induction program, a mentor teacher or the administration can provide that support for teachers so that they can expect more of themselves and feel supported in expecting more. Sometimes when you feel like you should be doing more, you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, but these activities would help with that. If teachers are held to a higher standard, then they'll be able to hold their students to higher standards too, kind of just in building a culture at school of like, this is the standard we expect of ourselves, and this is the standard we expect of you as well. If there are high expectations throughout the school, that'll trickle, come from the administration to the student or to the teachers down to the students, and then just be kind of a building culture. If we hold high expectations for ourselves, then we hold them for the school as well. So it works back up. The school will never change without those who want to hold higher standards. If all the teachers are complacent, the school is just good enough. It's never going to be better. A 2019 article from The Conversation by Hudson S. says that supporting new teachers should be a shared responsibility. Developing a community of mentors within the school culture ensures the sustainability of future mentoring support. And in turn, this creates a stronger school culture to back the ideas that you've laid out. So if we share the responsibilities, it will create more pride in what we're doing as a school. And if the goal is to support the students, which it should be, then goals will be strived for every day by every teacher because we're working for the same end, or we're working to the same end. Another way this applies is that teachers need to know the best ways to support their students, and every school has a little bit different kind of students, so they need the ways to support the students. Professional development is a great way to bring ideas together to be shared. You may be new to the school, you may have been there for a long time, but sharing those ideas is always going to be a better way to create the best atmosphere in the school for teachers and for students. Teachers can't be expected to know all of the possible strategies on their own. Providing the best evidence-based practice for teachers to use in their classroom can provide better outcomes for students. Again, teachers can only do so much as far as researching goes and learning goes on their own. So by providing some of those things for them, especially as newer teachers when they have a lot else to think about, can provide the best for their students. And providing professional development on how to support struggling students will give the teacher the tools to help all the students all feel safe, all feel included, all feel the positive environment of the school, feel that the culture is good around them, and just to feel healthy socially and emotionally. So there are a couple questions that I still had. One question I had is, when providing professional development about supporting the needs of special education students, who should be part of that professional development? Because I feel like when I was doing the original assignment, a lot of the professional development is geared towards special education teachers or the special education program directors. But in my opinion, I feel like anybody who is on a special education IEP team or is part of a special education student's growth needs to have that professional development as well. I know I had some before I was in this program in school, and it was nice to have. But I feel like if you are part of that student's growth, part of that student's learning, it's going to help you to have that support, and then you're going to in turn be able to help the student better. Robinson J. wrote for NEA Today in 2019 that professional development courses can be refreshing not only for the wealth of knowledge you can acquire, but for the people you work with as well. So this kind of supports what I'm saying, because you get that wealth of knowledge. You get that wealth of knowledge on things that you need to know for your classes, for your students, for special education and general education students, but also for working with other people. If you're in a professional development meeting with your special education IEP team for different students, you get to work with those people that you're going to work with when working with the students. You're going to be able to meet with the same people who would be on an IEP team, and you can decide together how you can support the students the best possible. And again, teamwork's going to give you a lot better outcomes than just working on your own. Another question that I had is, what kind of role can I take on in my school now as a non-special education teacher? So what kind of role can I take on in special education even though I'm a non-special education teacher? So not being in the special education classroom right now currently kind of put some dampers on what I can do. I might have ideas for what I can do for my special education students or students with different needs, but being a general education teacher, I feel as though, and being a younger teacher, I feel as though I don't have as much pull on those ideas. But in the article, The Role of Special Education Teachers in Promoting an Inclusive Classroom from the AU School of Education in 2020 discusses the need for advocating for students. So it talks about how I could still advocate for my students. It talks about how I could still advocate for the parents, and it talks about how I could still make suggestions for a change in the school. Of course, I can always advocate for students. Teachers can always advocate for their students, whether they're special education or general education or gifted education. They can always be advocates for the parents, because I feel like parents a lot of times are pushed aside when thinking about what's best for a student or if their opinion really matters. And maybe as a general education teacher, that can be the job that I have, is to advocate for those parents and make sure that their voices are being heard too, because they may feel more comfortable talking to a student's classroom teacher rather than in front of an entire IEP team. And then I can always still make suggestions to the school. You can always still think of changes, and whether they happen or not, that's up to the administration. So some growths and some opportunities that I still have. One strength that I feel like I have is from these assignments is looking at special education from new perspectives. I think it's always good to look at something from somebody else's perspective. And in the induction program, I was looking from a mentor's perspective at what it would look like to teach another teacher, what it would look like to hold a teacher to their highest expectations. In the professional development, I was looking at what it would be like to be a school leader and leading that professional development for other teachers and deciding what they need as well. So it really gave me a look at different perspectives and put me into the role of leadership that I would need to make changes in the school, real changes in the school. It also helped me to create new and higher expectations for myself, because just looking at it kind of gave me a reflection on what I do currently and what I could do better. Another strength that I had from these is that I began to think about how the expectations of teachers really affect the child, because we may go to school thinking that, well, we're doing our job, we're doing what's asked of us, and that's good enough. But in reality, we need to have higher expectations for ourselves if we're going to provide the best for our students. And when we support each other more, we can feel more confident in the classroom. When we support each other as teachers, or the administrators support us, or we support our special education teachers, or special education teachers support us, generally you just feel more confident in what you're doing because you've bounced that off another person and you have another perspective to work with. And we can give more energy to the kids when we know that we're confident and that we have less things to worry about because we have that support. Thinking about the induction program, if that new teacher has that support of a mentor, they can then turn their energy as a new teacher to the kids and not to planning, not to learning how to read an IEP on their own. They can now plan for the students and help the students as much as possible without worrying about everything else. Something that I can still work on, looking back on the professional development and the induction program, is that I'm still not very confident that I could take on a role like that I could be a mentor to somebody else, or that I could be a leader for some kind of professional development. Even if I feel like my knowledge in the subject is good, I just feel like as a younger teacher, I haven't been around long enough to have enough clout to teach something like that, or I might be too unexperienced because I've only been in education in general for 3 years. So I need to work on the confidence that I could do that. I think that there's a lot more that we can do, and until you've tried it, you don't know. So although I don't currently see myself as a mentor, or I don't currently see myself as a school leader, that doesn't mean that I can't hold myself to a higher expectation like I've been talking about, and be a better advocate for all of those things. So once again, I am Riley Byrne. That was my mastery in leadership and policy, and this was for my seminar class in special education master graduate program. Thanks for watching.